first time BBC television filmed the Shah was in 1948. The 27-year-old king was visiting a military base in southern England.
The main object of his visit is to study our scientific and industrial technique, to see what contribution they can make to the life and well-being of his own people.
The Shah had, since he was a young man, had a fascination with things military. He wanted the very best, the most sophisticated equipment, and he was sure he could create that kind of modern force in Iran. He had no self-doubts about that enterprise.
While the Shah smiled throughout his visit, he later told the BBC that he had been deeply angered by the behavior of the British towards his father, Reza Shah, and his country.
In 1941, shortly after Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, British and Russian forces entered Iran against only token resistance by the Iranian army, after warning Reza Shah about his links with the Germans. The old Shah abruptly abdicated and went into exile. His 21-year-old son was faced with the formidable task of taking over a country suffering from the shock and humiliation of a foreign invasion.
What I approach eventually my father is not to have mine the oil fields and tell you that if you come, I'm going to blow up everything. But the worst was what happened next, that the occupation of the country led to so many evil, fifth columns and the reapparition of the feudal chieftains, also a very reactionary power of the clergy or the mullahs.
The first real threat to the Shah's power came in the early 1950s. A new Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, had won huge public support by taking Iranian oil back into government ownership and ending the 40-year monopoly enjoyed by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Mossadegh then set his sights on the Shah. He wanted to curb his power and turn him into a constitutional monarch, a titular head of state. In August 1953, the Shah left for a holiday in Italy, believing that Mossadegh was about to force him to abdicate. But Mossadegh had miscalculated. This was the 50s and the height of the Cold War. America, fearing that Mossadegh was too close or too tolerant of a small but burgeoning communist movement in Iran, had already decided to act. 3 days after the Shah had left Iran, a military coup backed and orchestrated by the CIA removed Mossadegh from power. The Shah returned the following day.
اگر بگوییم که 28 مرداد و چند ماهی پس از اون شاه باز در اوج محبوبیت بود که بود، برای اینکه مردم فکر می‌کردن که وجود او سبب شده است که خطر حزب توده و کمونیست‌ها از بین برود، برطرف بشود، ولی با سیاست‌هاش، با مداخلاتش در امور روزانه کشور، در خرابکاریش در کار دولت و این کاری بود که همیشه می‌کرد، به سرعت این قبول عام از بین رفت.
اما کودتا یک تأثیر دیگری هم در داخل ایران داشت و اون عبارت از این بود که نظام پادشاهی رو آخرین رگه ها یا آخرین چیزهای مشروعیتش از بین برد. برای اینکه در نظام پادشاهی ایران حتی در دورانهای باستانی این رسم بود که هرگاه پادشاهی به دلیل مخالفت مردمش از کشورش فرار میکرد، میرفت و بعد به کمک یک ارتش دیگری میآمد حکومت رو به دست میگرفت، اون پادشاه دیگه مشروعیت نداشت برای اینکه دیگه از دست ملتش رفته دوره برگشته، اونم با یک دولت کمک یک دولت اجنبی.
Back on the throne, the Shah consolidated his power. Parliament's wings were clipped and he became, in effect, an absolute monarch.
These were his army chiefs. It was these generals who backed him in his struggle against Mossadegh in 1953. Today, the Shah depends on the army above all for his personal security, the continued ability to do his job, and even perhaps to remain on his throne. Unlike his father, Reza, who started life as a Russian army corporal, the Shah is no soldier. His officers do a good bit of feuding among themselves, which has helped him to stop any one of them from gaining too much power. But he's careful to keep them happy by giving them lavish funds, mostly from American aid.
The Shah returned to Britain in 1955. While he went shopping for military equipment, Queen Soraya, his then wife, was presented with the latest in British fashion. The Shah was now intent on turning Iran into a military superpower. In the 1950s, Iran's northern neighbor, the Soviet Union, was expanding its influence in the Middle East. Britain and the United States saw the Shah as a useful ally in their battle against Soviet expansion. Thousands of American military and civilian advisors started to work in Iran. With them came a large and steady flow of dollars. In the late 1950s, American military and economic aid amounted to 22% of the Iranian government's spending. Yet the Shah didn't rely on the Americans to protect Iran's borders from the Soviet Union. In a bold move, he struck a deal with the Russians.
شاه موفق شد با یک دیپلماسی بسیار درخشان روس‌ها را آرام بکند و اطمینان بدهد که با اینکه ایران در سنتو بود و در واقع جزء کمربند دفاعی امریکا، یعنی عملاً و رسما حتی منتها تعهد کرد که هرگز پایگاه نظامی به امریکایی‌ها ندهد.
By this time, the Shah had divorced Queen Soraya, who had not managed to provide him with an heir. A few months later, he married Farah Diba, an architecture student.
خیلی راحت منو گذاشتن. میدونی یه کسی نبود که آدم مثلا وحشت کنه باش صحبت بکنه. از یه طرفی هم خود من یه آدمی بودم که نمیدونم همون آدمی بودم که همیشه بودم و هستم. حتی اتفاقا یادم میاد راجع به موضوع یه دفعه خب بعد از چند سال ازت پرسیدم که چطور شد شما منو انتخاب کردین. بعد گفت من از سادگیت خوشم آمد و این خب برای من خیلی باعث خوشحالی بود.
The Shah's eldest son was born a year after the wedding.
The prince seemed a jolly baby, likely to make the most of the carefree years before he discovers, like his father, the other side of the coin of power in the Middle East.
Your son, the Crown Prince, is now a year old. Do you anticipate his assuming a kind of monarchical tradition of your sort, or would he be a different kind of king?
Well, I hope for himself that the country, when he will assume power, will be in such a state of maturity that he will have a little less burden. But a king in this country, I think that morally and in question of prestige will still keep a very dominant position.
The Shah himself knows his own upper class only too well. As he arrived with Queen Farah Diba at the Marble Palace in Tehran for his birthday reception, the evening can have held few new faces. The ranks are pretty tight in the exclusive circle of families which rate invitations. The women are cosmopolitan and amusing. They enjoy gay life and resent the efforts of the Shah and his Prime Minister to limit their foreign expenditure. Their menfolk are mostly very rich and very self-seeking. They don't seem to care much about the Shah's plans. They bring to his court what seemed to me to be its air of somewhat self-conscious grandeur. Everyone seemed to be acting a part. The effect smacked more of a copy of 19th century European courts than of Iran's older traditions of royal life.
Sometimes I think that if anything happens to me, what will happen to the country? I remember my father one day, told me that he was thinking of creating such a machine that will automatically run the affairs of the country when he goes. I was hurt. I thought that maybe he did not trust in me. But when I assumed power, I saw how right he was. That's why my job and endeavor is also to create a machine that could run really the affairs of the country, at least the ordinary affairs of the country.
He had already created his own intelligence agency. After the 1953 coup, the CIA helped him set up SAVAK, the Organization for National Intelligence and Security. To the Shah, the communists and supporters of Mossadegh were his only serious opposition. SAVAK ruthlessly suppressed them through torture and execution. Muhammad Ali Amoui was a member of Iran's Communist Party's military underground network. He was imprisoned after the 1953 coup and spent 24 years in prison.
اصلا نمیتونم توضیح بدم که نوع دردش چیه. من فقط اشاره میکنم این فوتبالیستا وقتی که توپ به بیضشون میخوره چه حالتی پیدا میکنن. اصلا قابل مقایسه نیست با اون دردی که یک سفره چرمی هست، بیضه رو میذارن و یواش یواش شروع میکنن به ماساژ دادن. نمیتونه تداوم پیدا کنه، بیهوش میشه آدم.
In the early 1960s, the Shah embarked on what he called his White Revolution, an ambitious series of reforms. They included dividing large parcels of land among the peasants and changing Iran's electoral system. The reforms were intended to transform Iran from a feudal society under the guidance of religious leaders into an industrialized country where the mosque had no say. In elaborate ceremonies, the Shah personally handed out the deeds to the farmers. But it was the electoral reforms that set the Shah on a collision course with the country's real power base. On the 9th of October 1962, a high-ranking cleric sent a telegram to the Shah asking him to reverse the changes.
In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Your Imperial Majesty. After expressing my greetings and blessings, newspaper reports indicate that in the law regarding local elections for provinces and cities, the government has not indicated that voters and those elected should be Muslim. Also, it has given women the right to vote. This has caused great concern for the eminent scholars and other groups of Muslims. Please order the reversal of those laws which are against the holy official religion of the country.
Ayatollah Ruhollah Mousavi Khomeini was one of the most prominent seminary teachers in Iran's religious capital, Qom. It was an ominous sign. The clergy, for the most part, had stayed out of politics. The unspoken deal was that they would back the monarchy as long as the monarchy protected the religious establishment.
Everyone tries his hardest to have audience of the Shah on this day at a ceremony called the Salam. Religious men from all over the country were the first to make their salams and the first to go home again. They're a powerful lot and can give the Shah valuable support.
من یادم هر دفعه که علازت به مراکز مذهبی میرفتن آقایون آخوندا چجوری همدیگر رو هول میدادن که تو عکس با علازت باشن و خیلی با احترام، و خود من هم که میرفتم تو این مراکز خیلی با احترام میومدن برای اینکه میدونستن که من در کارهای خیریه هستم یا یه تقاضایی داشتن یا مثلا برای مرمت فلان مسجد یا مرمت فلان مرکز مذهبی.
A year later, on the 3rd of June 1963, Ayatollah Khomeini went much further. It was the night of Ashura, the anniversary of the death of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. Ayatollah Khomeini compared the Shah to Yazid, the 7th century caliph who had murdered Imam Hussein.
Mr. Shah, I advise you, I'm telling you, Mr. Shah, that they are deceiving you. I really don't want people to be happy if they ask you to leave the country. Don't do whatever they ask you to do. Think for yourself. What is our relationship with Israel that the intelligence organization asks us not to talk about it? Is the Shah Israeli?
This time, Ayatollah Khomeini was arrested by the Shah's police. The next day, thousands of his supporters took to the streets of Tehran and the religious capital, Qom.
چه روحانیت، چه ملت، چه روشنفکرها، چه دانشگاه‌ها، همه نسبت به امام ترویج کرده بودن. اون ترویج از امام و اون هدایت‌های امام و اون فضیلتی که امام داشت سبب شد مردم خودسرانه بیان، که بعضی از آقایونی که خیلی به مسائل نیستن گفتن حرکت کور بوده. نه خیلی حرکت بینایی بود و همون حرکت بینایی منشأ بسیاری از آثار شد.
The Shah was taken aback by the number of non-clerics who joined Ayatollah Khomeini's movement. Among them were members of the Freedom Movement of Iran, a political party which was formed in the early 60s by the supporters of Mohammad Mossadegh.
اون توده های مردمی که ما بهشون دسترسی نداریم از طریق این شبکه روحانیت که چندین هزار مسجد در تمام ایرانه، 180,000 روحانی در سرتاسر ایران، به هر کوره دهی که شما میرید یه مسجد، یه حسینیه است وجود دارن. همه اینها توی حوزه های علمیه درس خوندن، انسجام آموزش های عقیدتی دارن. همه اینا خودش یک شبکه بزرگ، یک ارتش ایدئولوژیک هستش. بنابراین آقای خمینی وقتی وارد مبارزه سیاسی میشه ما استقبال کردیم. دلیلش هم این بود که خب ما به اون توده ها دسترسی نداشتیم.
The army responded with brute force. The tanks moved in and opened fire on the demonstrators. The Shah's government announced that 20 people were killed. Ayatollah Khomeini's followers estimated that hundreds had lost their lives. The true numbers will never be known.
اون موقعی که این باعث نگرانی و تعجب شد که چطور مردم موقعی که یک برنامه‌های ریخته شده که به نفعشونه، به نفع کارگر و روستا و زن و گروه زحمتکش به قول چپی‌ها، چطور ممکنه که تظاهرات و شرکت میکنن در این تظاهرات. بعد که خب اونجا با کمک آقای علم که اون موقع نخست وزیر بود و واقعا مسئولیت یک نخست وزیر رو انجام داد که اینها رو خوابوند، دیگه ما فکر کردیم تموم شده.
نه تنها فکر میکردیم سرکوب شده و تموم شده، فکر میکردیم شاه شکست ناپذیره. ما همه رو از چه شاه میدید، اصلا نمیدونستیم که بی علم همون بساط 15 سال بعد تکرار خواهد شد.
But even then, the Shah still felt the need to keep the clergy sweet. Under pressure from the religious authorities, he released Ayatollah Khomeini in April 1964. Later that year, the Ayatollah released a statement. He condemned the growing number of American military advisors in Iran and a law which gave US soldiers immunity from prosecution by local courts.
According to this disgraceful law, if an American military advisor or even his servant harms a prominent Muslim scholar or an Iranian authority or citizen, the police cannot arrest him. But if the dog of an American is insulted, the police have to intervene and the dog's case has to be presented to the court.
Ayatollah Khomeini was ordered out of the country by Prime Minister Hassan Ali Mansour in November 1964. He eventually settled in the bastion of Shia Islam, the city of Najaf in Iraq. 2 months later, Mansour was assassinated by a supporter of the Ayatollah. The Shah immediately appointed Amir Abbas Hoveyda, who remained Prime Minister for 13 years.
I think the luck of this country is that he has such a Shah and that the Shah is dealing with the affairs. As a matter of fact, if you look at our history, you find out that any time we had a strong Shah, this country went in the peak of development. Any time we had the weak Shah, the country was either occupied by you Britishers or by the Russian, I don't know by whom. Therefore, what is important is to have a strong Shah who certainly could bring behind him all the nation.
During much of Hoveyda's premiership, the economy grew steadily and Iran enjoyed what looked like a period of stability. The Shah's powers reached unprecedented heights and he took to using the name enjoyed by the ancient Persian emperors, the shadow of God. Outside Iran, he and Queen Farah became international celebrities. But the seeming calm came at a price. Iran was now a police state. Savak had agents everywhere, including a special unit for student activists. Michael Metrinko taught English at a university in Iran. Many of his students were arrested.
The things they went to jail for seemed so minor. If they had been in America, nobody would have noticed anything. They were more of the genre of student activist and not student opposition. Just people who were interested in changing something. And in the United States at a college, in England at a college, they would have been on the student council, that's all. Trying to get the grading system changed or, you know, the cafeteria improved or something like that.
In exile in Najaf, Ayatollah Khomeini had time to refine his vision of an ideal Islamic government. He called it Velayat-e-Faqih, a system, he wrote, in which a high-ranking Shia cleric would be the supreme leader of the country and have absolute control over the affairs of the nation. Dissent would not be allowed. Many devout young Iranian Muslims chose Ayatollah Khomeini as their marja, an object of emulation who could interpret the teachings of Islam for them. Abbas Abdi was among them.
اصلی ترین تفاوتی که میشه گفت بین امام و دیگر مراجع وجود داشت اعتقاد به اینه که ما یه حکومت میتونیم جای بذاریم. حالا اینکه این حکومت چیه، مشخصاتش چیه، مسئله فرعی قضیه است یا حداقل اون موقع فرعی مینمود. این که چنین چیزی رو داریم و میخوایم جایگزین کنیم، این بسیج کننده اصلی نیروها بود.
The man who called himself the shadow of God continued to underestimate the men of God in Iranian society. He had his own vision of the country he wanted Iran to be.
We want to couple modern technology with the spirit of our old civilization. We are 3,000 years old.
In 1968, the Shah and his queen hosted a lavish arts festival in Shiraz. The aim was to put Iran on the map as a cultural crossing point between East and West. Avant-garde performances, including erotic and nude scenes, struck a sour note with many Iranians, and not just the devout.
دانشگاه ما چپیای دانشگاه رو این نوع مثلا روابط ولنگاری و بیبندوباری حساستر از مذهبی ها بودن و حتی برخوردم میکردن به دلیل اینکه این فرهنگ رو فقط فرهنگ خالص نمیدیدن، یه وجه از سیاست هم برای اون قائل بودن. سیاست های فرهنگی شاه رو فقط در حد همین قضیه فرهنگ نمیدیدن، یه نوع سیاست ضد مذهبی و یه نوع سیاست ضد سیاسی شدن هم تصور داشتن.
There is a very specific and special relationship between me and my people. This maybe is not very well understood in other countries. And as long as this special relationship exists between myself and my people, I don't see where somebody should or could step in and break it.
In 1971, the Shah treated his subjects to another spectacular, this time in Persepolis, to mark 2,500 years of the Persian Empire. Dozens of foreign dignitaries, including 30 heads of state, were invited to the party. They were housed in 50 air-conditioned tents with the menu provided by Chez Maxime in Paris. And 4,000 soldiers from the Iranian army reenacted the history of the kingdom.
در جشن‌های 2500 ساله شاه دیگه رسیده بود به اون نهایت اون جنون عظمتی که مگالومانیایی که خارجی‌ها ازش صحبت می‌کردن و داشت.
There was a serious side to the celebrations. 2,500 schools were built around Iran. But such acts were overshadowed by the party in Persepolis. As the Shah and his guests looked on the parade, Ayatollah Khomeini sent a message to his supporters.
People should protest against this. They should ask, they should implore other nations not to take part in these nasty celebrations. These are dirty celebrations. Tell the Islamic nations not to take part in them. These are ceremonies that Israeli experts have created. Don't take part in them.
بابا بعد از 2500 سال ما یه دفعه جشن میگیریم. ببینید ممالک دیگه غربی 200 سالشون رو جشن میگیرن، هر سال چه مهمونیایی میدن، یا آمریکا هم 200 سال آزادیش و ایندیپندنس یا هرچی هست جشن میگیره و بعد اون چیزای اساسی اون جشن ها رو در نظر نگرفتن متاسفانه.
Uri Lubrani was the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia before his posting in Iran. He saw parallels between the Shah and Emperor Haile Selassie, another autocratic, remote monarch.
I felt when I came to Tehran, and after a period of time, I felt that the Shah has lost his touch with the people, his contact with the people. He has become so arrogantly overconfident, believing that he had all the answers, that he knew what Iran needed and should not heed to what the people think or do.
Lubrani had plenty of time to observe the Shah, meeting him on several occasions. The Shah was in awe of Israel's military prowess, particularly impressed by its swift victory during the Six-Day War in 1967.
He really wanted to learn from Israel's experience how Israel succeeded to do it, and he started to purchase every kind of aeroplane that only appear in America. F-14, F-16, F-18 only they spoke about. Before they appear, he bought 200 to be ready with a strong air force to use Israeli systems as a superpower to smash all possible enemies. The main enemies, as you know, used to be Iraq.
The Shah felt that Persian Iran, like Israel, was constantly under threat from its Arab neighbors. An alliance with Israel seemed natural. In particular, the Shah was worried about the most powerful man in Iraq, Vice President Saddam Hussein. Saddam never concealed his dislike for the Shah and for Persians in general. He resurrected border disputes between Iran and Iraq and forced thousands of Iraqis of Iranian origin into exile in the 1970s. At the time, Saddam was also traveling around the world trying to acquire the most sophisticated military equipment, including nuclear technology.
At the time, the Shah made it quite clear that the fact that Iran is threatened by the Arab states, and in particular by Iraq, made it of interest for Iran to establish a relationship with a country which is menaced by the same enemy.
Ironically, it was action by some of those same Arab nations that literally transformed Iran's fortunes. After the Seven-Day War in 1973, Arab oil-producing countries boycotted Israel's Western allies. The price of oil skyrocketed. Iranian oil revenues jumped from $4 billion in 1973 to almost $20 billion a year later. With the wealth came newfound respect from the Shah's Western allies.
The special jet from London brought the Chancellor and Mr. Walker direct to St. Moritz. The two ministers have come here to jet-set Switzerland to see the Shah of Persia about oil for Britain.
With the wealth came newfound respect from the Shah's Western allies.
The special jet from London brought the Chancellor and Mr. Walker direct to St. Moritz. The two ministers have come here to jet-set Switzerland to see the Shah of Persia about oil for Britain. The Shah's here for a month, and he consented to break his annual winter holiday to see them. Mr. Barber apparently batted first, having half an hour with the Shah, discussing mainly very long-range ideas. He wants to persuade the Shah to reinvest some of his enormous oil profits through the London money markets.
We did cover the whole range of Anglo-Iranian relations, and particularly matters concerning economic relations. And what I think really did impress me was not only his grasp of the matters we were discussing, but also his very high regard for the United Kingdom.
As the money rolled in, the Shah continued to pursue his lifelong ambition of turning Iran into a military superpower. This suited the United States. President Nixon had already adopted his Nixon doctrine of allowing other nations to assume greater responsibilities for their own defense. The security of the Persian Gulf was readily delegated to the Shah.
What is your ambition? To be the fourth largest military power in the world?
Probably the best, non-atomic.
Today, Iran's armed forces possess simply the best military equipment in the world, no matter where it's made. This combined artillery battalion is made up both of 175mm guns from America and 130s from Russia, the ones the North Vietnamese used to such effect. It's a powerful combination.
From where the Shah sat, Iran's impressive economic growth and political stability offered lessons for other countries.
You will have to change, because if you don't change, I don't know what is going to happen to you in the future.
What do you think will happen?
Go back to the caves?
You think that's our fate?
If it continues really in this way, it might take some time, but you are going to go down and down. You can't move up.
Because of our lack of discipline, you think?
Because of your lack of discipline. This is the best word that could be used.
قدرت دفاعی برای ایران لازم بود، ولی پنجمین ارتش جهان این یک پایه، یک زیرساخت، یک پی اقتصادی، صنعتی و فرهنگی میخواد که ایران تا 20 سال بعدش هم نمیتونست پیدا بکنه. اینها رو دیگه متوجه نش. شاه به عمق هیچ موضوعی در زندگیش نرفت، نمیتوانست، ذهنش توانایی رفتن به عمق نداشت.
As Commander-in-Chief, why is it that you need a fighter bomber force of 300 planes? Why do you need 700 helicopters, 1,700 tanks? Where exactly is the threat that demands a war machine of this size?
Well, I have been asked about the same question in 2 or 3 places. My invariable answer from now on will be, it's as if you ask the same question to the British or the French. We are assuming such a position, and even eventually more even than you in Europe, because of the vacuum that there is around us. There is nothing.
The immediate threat was still Iraq. Although Iran and Iraq signed an accord respecting each other's borders in 1975, the Shah never believed Saddam would honor it. He spoke frankly to the Israeli ambassador.
He laughed. He said, this agreement I was referring to is not worth the paper it was signed on. And he felt, the Shah at the time felt, that he has no doubt that when the time came, Iran is going to be attacked by Iraq. And I have to have a strong and modern army.
While the Shah focused on his foreign enemies, Savak, his intelligence agency, was losing sight of the real threat closer to home. The oil wealth had mainly benefited a small group close to the Shah. The gap between rich and poor was becoming a gulf. In Najaf, Ayatollah Khomeini sharpened his pen.
The Shah has been talking about progress for more than 10 years. But the majority of people are engulfed in poverty and misery. He has beautified Tehran on the surface and has built multi-story buildings for himself and his cronies. But in villages where the majority of people live, they don't even have the most basic standard of living.
Foreign intelligence organizations were seemingly oblivious to the grievances building up within Iran. The CIA was much more interested in what was going on in its northern neighbor, the Soviet Union.
The reading from Washington was that the Shah was completely in control, that there was no great threat to his rule, and we didn't have to pay much attention to that. And I realize for Iranians, this is impossible to believe. I mean, that the Americans were not worried about all of the little things that were going on inside Iran. For the most part, we really were not interested at all. Iran was a base from which we could watch a lot of other things going on, but it was not, we were not particularly interested in the domestic operations in Iran itself.
The world was, though, keenly interested in the price of oil. The Shah resisted all efforts to get him to bring down the price. Instead, he urged the West to cut back on its consumption, a message well ahead of its time.
Since we have a very nasty climate, why do you say that we should suffer this kind of discomfort and this kind of...
Well, you call that discomfort, but do you know that you can get 70,000 derivatives from oil? Is it right to waste it? What couldn't we do with those 70,000 derivatives? Your fathers and forefathers lived, and probably they were as strong as you are, and their houses were either heated with coal or not heated at all. But in any way, you are just wasting this precious stuff.
The dollar, in particular, was hit hard by the high price of oil. Yet the Shah continued to enjoy Nixon's support.
The American government tried to get him to moderate the price of oil following the big increase in 1973. And we never succeeded in gaining any moderation on that score at all.
Then, in 1975, the tide began to turn.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
Presidential candidate Jimmy Carter criticized the Nixon administration for ignoring human rights abuses and selling weapons to dictatorships. Iran was one of those he singled out.
Iran is going to get 80 F-14s before we even meet our own Air Force orders for F-14s. And the shipment of Spruance-class destroyers to Iran are much more highly sophisticated than the Spruance-class destroyers that are presently being delivered to our own Navy. This is ridiculous, and it ought to be changed.
After he became president, he realized fairly quickly that the United States relied on the Shah, that we had tremendous political, military, and economic relations with Iran. What it did do, however, is that it opened up a lot of expression in Iran. Because for the first time, Iranian dissidents, people who were opposed to the Shah, thought that they had an ally in Washington, and they were speaking far more freely.
In 1976, the CIA released a psychological profile of the Shah in which he was described as a brilliant but dangerous megalomaniac who was likely to pursue his own aims in disregard to the interests of the United States.
ذهنیت ما درست یا غلط این بود که آمریکا حامی شاهه. یعنی اون به واسطه این حمایت که این قدرت از خودش نشون میده. حالا شما ببینید یه رئیس جمهوری اومده که اولین شعارش علیه یا یه شعار مهمش یه جوریه که میشه علیه این رژیم اونو تفسیر کرد. اصلا خود این روحیه بخش میشه که آقا پشت طرف داره چی میشه؟ خالی میشه.
Accepting the new reality, the Shah's government gave in to American demands for more freedom of expression and respect for human rights. But democracy was still a step too far.
Do you foresee a time when when Iran might return to a multi-party system? Is this a temporary measure to meet a crisis, or do you think this is the kind of political system best suited to your country more or less permanently?
All will depend on the will of the people finally, because I'm not eternal, and there will be the after me time. But I think that we have just taken what is good for this country. And I even sometimes wonder if this multi-party system is good for those who have it elsewhere.
After nearly 13 years, the Shah replaced his Prime Minister, Hoveyda, with Jamshid Amuzegar. Then, when Iran's Arab neighbors lifted the oil boycott, the price of oil fell and the bonanza was over. The Shah continued to expand the army, but most of his ambitious industrial and economic projects were stalled.
This came to a bad moment when oil prices leveled off in '75, and the boom that they had created in Iran began to stagnate or subside. A lot of people who had been called in from the village to work on construction projects were left without work, and I think it provided a kind of tinder for the revolution that was to come.
On the 31st of December 1977, Jimmy Carter and his wife celebrated the New Year in Iran.
Iran, because of the great leadership of the Shah, is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world. This is a great tribute to you, Your Majesty, and to your leadership, and to the respect and the admiration and love which your people give to you.
I watched President Carter on TV toasting the Shah on New Year's Eve and thought it was one of the silliest things I had ever seen, especially when the Shah lifted his champagne glass. And I thought, we're in a Muslim country. He's celebrating an American holiday by toasting with alcohol. Isn't this dumb? Doesn't he know anything about his own country or the people in his own country?
Within a week of President Carter's visit, the Shah made what may have been the biggest mistake of his reign. Ayatollah Khomeini's son had died in mysterious circumstances in Najaf 2 months earlier. The word on the street was that Savak, acting on the Shah's orders, had killed him. Hoveyda, the former prime minister, was given the task of planting an article in the press rebutting the claims. It was the first mention of Ayatollah Khomeini's name in a national newspaper since his expulsion in 1964. The article accused Ayatollah Khomeini of being an anti-revolutionary agent of the British. It had an incendiary effect. Thousands of protesters poured onto the streets. It wasn't just Tehran. Chanting crowds emerged in several cities. The name on their tongues, Khomeini.
I think most older Iranians knew his name, but a lot of younger ones had not heard it, because I asked younger people and they literally did not know. And later on, as the revolution became hotter and hotter, and more people were getting involved in it, I would ask them when they had first heard the name Khomeini, and they would admit that I just heard it this year, a couple of months ago.
The army brought the protests to a swift end by opening fire on the demonstrators. But although the Shah still didn't know it, a 77-year-old exiled cleric now posed a real threat to his regime. In part 2, in 2 weeks' time, the Shah's final tumultuous year and the triumphant return of an Ayatollah. By the 70s, the Shah of Iran had become, to many of his subjects, a remote, autocratic figure living in unimaginable luxury. His parliament was now a mere rubber stamper of his commands. He had total control.
با گرفتاریایی که بود، با گروه‌های مخالفی که بود، با شوروی و گروه‌های دیگه، شاید برای ایشون راه دیگری در اون موقع نبود و الان آدم فکر میکنه که اون موقعی که فضای باز سیاسی به وجود آمد متاسفانه بد موقعی بود.
یعنی تلویحاً قبول کرده بودن که خودشون خلاف قانون اساسی عمل میکنه، ولی به خاطر موقعیت اضطراری که ایران داشته.
بله، به دلیل خب گروه هایی که میخواستن اصلا تیشه به رژیم سیستم بزنن. خب ایشون معتقد بود که پادشاهی یه چیزی که برای ایران خوبه، برای یک پارچگی ایران و یه سمبل بالای همه احزاب.
Do you think that the absolute power which you hold in your country might be dangerous in someone else's hands?
Not if they keep the present institutions that I have set up, because personally I have 3 or 4 channels of inspection and learning the truth. If what I have today at my disposal is kept intact, they will be provided with all the instruments of checking and controlling.
But these channels all come back to you?
They come back to me, yes, as they should.
So it isn't an exaggeration, in fact, to say that you have absolute power inside Iran?
I have absolute power, maybe, because things have turned this way.
In January 1978, the Shah made what was probably the biggest mistake of his reign. On his orders, a newspaper article was published. It triggered an extraordinary response, with protests erupting in several cities in Iran. Thousands of people poured onto the streets, chanting the name of a 77-year-old cleric who'd been living in exile for almost 15 years.
The first time I actually heard the name of Imam Khomeini was on the streets of Tabriz. I want to say it was February of the year 1978. When I heard his name being shouted, "Long live Khomeini," I asked who it was. I was told something about his background. I think most older Iranians knew his name, but a lot of younger ones had not heard it, because I asked younger people and they literally did not know. And later on, as the revolution became hotter and hotter, and more people were getting involved in it, I would ask them when they had first heard the name Khomeini, and they would admit that I just heard it this year, a couple of months ago.
The article, planted by the Shah's secret police, Savak, accused Ayatollah Khomeini of being a British agent. The charge backfired and turned a respected but relatively obscure cleric into a figurehead for all those who opposed the Shah.
آقای خمینی یک استراتژیست بی‌نظیر بود. اگه کسی میآمد با ایشون صحبت میکرد، 90% باش مخالف بود، 10% باش موافق بود، میگفت تو که از خود ما هستی. خب این نگاه خیلی مهمه. در برابر کسانی که اگر شما باشون در 95% موافقین، در 5% مخالفید شما رو طرد میکنن، مثل خیلی از گروه‌های سیاسی که همکنون هم هستن. خب آقای خمینی اینجوری نبود.
Ayatollah Khomeini had been living in the Iraqi town of Najaf since the Shah had expelled him. His sermons were smuggled back into Iran on cassette tapes, and a small but dedicated band of supporters would do their best to spread his words to the mosques. His office in the Iranian city of Qom was kept under close watch by Savak throughout his years in exile, but it was never closed down.
ارتباط با امام به وسیله نامه، به وسیله افرادی که می رفتند و می آمدن و اینکه بیت امام را سر پا نگه داریم. یکی از وظایف انقلابیون و کسانی که در نهضت بودن، چون رفتن منزل امام خیلی ساده نبود، معمولا مشکل می تراشیدن، افراد را می گرفتن، بازداشت می کردن، اما بنابر این بود به هر قیمتی شده بیت رو زنده نگه دارن و لذا روحانیون می آمدن، می رفتن، بحث‌های مذهبی می کردن، بحث‌های دینی می کردن، چون بنا نبود اونجا بحث‌های سیاسی بشه. و مرحوم حجت الاسلام و المسلمین آقای احمد آقا رضوان الله تعالی علیه، یا آیت الله احمد آقا بگیم، اون هم در کنار این آقایون هدایت می کرد، ارتباط مستقیم با امام داشت تا به نتیجه رسید.
Just why the normally ruthless Savak allowed the Ayatollah's network to operate under their nose is not clear. The Shah's secret police had already successfully contained an underground network of guerrilla movements. Other opponents of his regime, including communist and nationalist activists, were arrested, tortured, and sometimes executed. But in a deeply religious country like Iran, it appears Savak felt it had to tread carefully.
اون موقع محلات تهران هر کدوم یه جلسات خاص خودشون هم داشتن که حتی علنی هم بود، یعنی حکومت هم کارش نمیتونست بکنه، اما خودمون میدونستیم که باید به این جلسات بریم.
در قم وقتی شما میرفتید، وقتی در عمق بازار قم میرفتید میخواستید تسبیح بخرید، این در رو که میبست پشت در، یعنی نه رو به خیابون، پشت در عکس بزرگ آیت الله خمینی بود. بنابراین این ظاهر شده بود، انگار که یه قطره‌ای میخواست که این قطره این سطل رو پر کنه یا بریزه یا حالت عمومی بهش بده. به تعبیر خود آقای خمینی که به دفعات گفته بود، اینو به این عموم ما شنیدیم، این که میگفتش که میوه برسه، بیاد تو خیابون. ایشون معمولا به گروهای چریکی اینا میگفت خودتون رو به کشتن ندیم، وقتی وقتش شد میگم.
The publication of the anti-Khomeini article provided that moment. The army was called in to crush the protests. Dozens were killed. 40 days later, even bigger crowds came onto the street to demonstrate against the killings and declare their support for the Ayatollah. Stunned by the scale of the protest, the Shah refused to believe that Ayatollah Khomeini alone could prompt such a response. He suspected the hand of foreign governments, and in conversation with US diplomats, directly accused America of supporting his opponents.
And he came up with two theories. One was the Americans wanted to, again, as in earlier in the 20th century, wanted to divide Iran into spheres of influence, with the Russians taking the north and the Americans taking the south with the oil. And that was one theory. The other theory that operated in his mind was that the Americans were not sure that he would stand up to Soviet power the way that they would like. And they thought that maybe a religious-led government would be more adamantly anti-communist than he was, and therefore they planned to get rid of him. It was this, my reaction was, what kind of a nut is it that we are depending on to preserve our interests in this very important country?
Amid the turmoil, the Shah's inner circle noticed changes in his behavior and appearance. He was losing weight, and his actions were becoming more erratic. The Shah had been diagnosed with lymphatic cancer in 1974, but he chose not to tell those closest to him. Another crisis, another prime minister. This time the Shah appointed a military man, General Azhari, and tasked him with bringing back law and order.
Martial law and a new military government are no long-term solutions to Iran's political problems, simply a short-term response to the violence of the past few days. The fact is, the Shah has failed to make civilian government work because he wasn't prepared to let his governments go as far as their opponents wanted them to. Now, a new military government will no doubt jam the lid hard down on political life once again. But until a proper solution is found here, there can be no satisfactory form of government for Iran.
But while the new military government was meant as a demonstration of strength, the embattled Shah was simultaneously offering concessions. Among the gestures was a mass release of political prisoners.
در یک شب مامورین اومدن اعلام کردن که لیست آوردن که فلانی و فلانی و فلانی آماده بشن، لباسشون بپوشن، آزادن برن، که اون لیست شامل 1000 نفر میشد. اولین زندانیان سری زندانیان سیاسی که آزاد شدن حدود 1000 نفر بودن، روز 4 آبان بود که منم جز اونها بودم. دیگه از زندان آزاد شدیم و از فردا شدیم و خیابون‌ها چقدر شلوغ، مردم در ازدحامن، تظاهرات هست و خلاصه ما هم دیگه شروع کردیم به شرکت در تظاهرات در کنار مردم.
In a further sop to the crowds, the Shah ordered the arrest of a number of his former ministers. But far from appeasing his opponents, the move was interpreted as a clear sign of his weakness. The Shah's allies simply felt betrayed. Dariush Homayun was one of those arrested and imprisoned.
نمیتونستم هیچ احساس ستایشی بکنم. حالا کمتری نیست که میتونم بگم. محترمانه تری نیست که میتونم بگم. اصلا به کلی سقوط کرد برای من. تمام شد اصلا. هیچ شایستگی نداره دیگه. اصلا برای مقامش شایستگی نداشت اون موقع. اون قیافه‌ای که من دیدم اون حالت شاه نبود. آدم بدبخت ذلیلی بود که بود دیگه اون موقع اینطور بود.
Amir Abbas Hoveyda, who served the Shah for 13 years as Prime Minister, was also arrested.
بعد خیلی ناراحت بودن. البته آدم با گذشت زمان میبینه که چقدر کار اشتباهی بود و باعث تأسف و همیشون هم یه از وزرایی که گرفتن. برای متاسفانه اون موقع اینقدر شرایط شلوغ و قاطی و عقاید مختلف می آمد و میرفت که خب یه تصمیماتی گرفته میشد که بعد آدم میبینه که تصمیمات درستی نبود. ولی خب این موقعی که آدم به عقب نگاه میکنه.
But despite the new military government, the anticipated crackdown on the demonstrations didn't materialize. The Shah no longer appeared to have the stomach for a fight.
اگر شاه واقعاً میخواست تظاهرات مردم رو سرکوب بکنه و کشتار وسیعی را بندازه، هرگز مردم نمیدونن تو تظاهرات میلیونی شرکت بکنن. تظاهرات میلیونی زمانی شروع شد که اطمینان پیدا کردن که کشت و کشتاری در بین نیست. سربازها رفتن تو سربازخونه ها، تو پادگان ها و کاملا در امنیت هستن.
By December, when millions of devout Iranians turned out for the annual Ashura, the anniversary of the death of Imam Hussein, the event turned into a pro-Khomeini demonstration of epic proportion.
This then is what the military government claims to be the minority voice of dissent in Iran today. This, no doubt, is what they'll later claim also to be a purely religious demonstration. But there's no mistaking what this, in fact, really is. It's a massive voice of protest against the rule of the Shah.
وقتی که فیلم ویدیوی تظاهرات عاشورا تاسوعا آمد، آقای خمینی برای اولین بار این رو به طور عینی لمس کرد که چه جایگاهی در انقلاب داره و جامعه داره کجا میره. نه تنها ایشون، خوب برای خود ما هم خیلی جالب بود دیگه. تا اون زمان ما چنین چیزهایی رو ندیده بودیم.
Counter demonstrations in favor of the Shah, organized by Savak, felt less than convincing.
Cars which did not show a royal portrait had their windscreen smashed by either the troops, the police or the demonstrators. Plainclothes agents who readily identified themselves made no secret of their role as crowd rousers. As with the cars, any shops not displaying loyal pictures were set upon by the demonstrators. Youths wielding sticks and stones, running down the streets, breaking windows and breaking heads when the mood took them.
In contrast to the previous year when they'd hosted a banquet for President Carter, the Shah and his wife celebrated the new year of 1979 quietly.
یعنی هر روز آدم میدید چجوری مثل یه بهمن از یه چیز اول تظاهرات کوچیکی که شروع شد اینجا و اونجا هی بزرگتر و بزرگتر شد و میگم مخالفین خیلی متشکل بودن و در اول که آدم فکر نمیکرد این تظاهرات یه چیزی که میخواد تمام اساس مملکت رو به هم بزنه و عکس العمل دولت هم اونجوری که باید درست نبود یا سعی میکردن در اون موقع یه کارهایی بکنن که نتیجه نداد دیگه. اواخر بود دیگه، بعد از ازهاری فکر میکنم که یادم تیمسار اویسی و تیمسار مقدم آمدن پیش من گفتن اگه تا 2 روز دیگه علازت یه نخست وزیر رو انتخاب نکنن ممکنه اصلا مردم از جنوب شهر بیان به کاخ حمله کنن.
In a final bid to save his throne, the Shah asked an opposition member, Shahpur Bakhtiar, to become the new prime minister. In the early 50s, Bakhtiar had been a junior minister in Mohammad Mossadegh's government. When he became prime minister in 1951, Mossadegh had tried and failed to curb the Shah's power. Bakhtiar's first act was to dissolve Savak and arrest a number of former ministers.
Mr. Bakhtiar, good morning. Could you say a few words for English television?
Government, please.
Would be the punishment of the person who was in charge for torture, for bribery, and so and so.
It's generally agreed that the government of Dr. Bakhtiar has only a slim chance of success, and that depends to a great extent on whether or not the Shah will go. But the question of that still clearly far from being resolved. The position of Iran's fourth prime minister in 5 months can at best be described as precarious.
The Shah's new prime minister had no confidence in his king. One of Bakhtiar's conditions for accepting the premiership was that the Shah should leave the country. As the Shah's power ebbed away, the American government was split on the best way forward. They saw the Shah as a useful ally in the battle to counter Soviet influence in the region. Under President Nixon, he'd been encouraged to build up his military and become America's gendarme in the Persian Gulf. Despite initial reservations, President Carter had continued the policy. Now, Carter's national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, a staunch anti-communist of Polish origin, wanted to encourage the Shah to crush the demonstrations and shore up his position once and for all. But Carter's Secretary of State, Cyrus Vance, was in favor of talking to the Ayatollah and his revolutionaries. In early January, the leaders of the US, France, Britain and Germany discussed the crisis at an informal conference in Guadeloupe. According to the New York Times, they agreed that although a new government in Iran may create difficulties for the Americans, it will be essentially pro-Western and not communist-oriented. In effect, they had given up on the Shah and were encouraged rather than alarmed by what they were hearing from Paris.
In Iran, there is no talk of communism, and even if there are communists, they're in a minority. In Iran, there is no danger of communists jeopardizing the interests of others. We want neither the communists nor any other foreigners, whatever power they have, to interfere in the affairs of Iran. We want to achieve our own liberty and independence.
On his return from the conference, the French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing brought a message from President Carter for Ayatollah Khomeini.
محتوای متن این بودش که به زودی شاه ایران رو ترک میکنه. دولت امریکا میخواد که آقای خمینی از دولت بختیار حمایت بکنه. سومی که اگر چنانچه آقای خمینی از دولت بختیار حمایت نکنه، بختیار سقوط بکنه، نظامیان کودتا میکنند. خب محتوا تقریبا این بود. آقای خمینی هم جواب داد که اولا بختیار کاری نیست، بختیار قانونی نیستش. دو اینکه نظامیان اختیارش دست امریکایی هاست. اگر چنانچه نظامی ها بخوان کودتا بکنن، مردم میدانن که امریکایی ها دارن این کار میکنن و مردم مقاومت میکنن، منم حکم جهاد خواهم داد، از این حرفا. و دولت امریکا مسئول خواهد بود. توصیه کرده بودن که امریکا دست از حمایت بختیار برداره، بذاره خود مردم ماها عرض کنم که اوضاع رو بهتر میتوانیم آرام بکنیم تا شما.
On January the 16th, the Shah accepted the inevitable and announced that he was leaving Iran for a holiday. On January the 16th, the Shah accepted the inevitable and announced that he was leaving Iran for a holiday.
خیلی وحشتناک بود. ببینید موقعی که آدم به خصوص برای اعلیحضرت، من نمیتونم خودم رو جای اعلیحضرت بذارم، یه مردی که تمام عمر و زندگیشو در راه مملکت گذاشته که با اون حالت بخواد بره و آدم ببینید سرزمینش خاکی، اون جایی که دنیا آمده، تمام دوستانش هر چیزی که بهش علاقه داره بذاره بره و ندونه که آیا یه بازگشتی هست یا نه. طبیعتا عده‌ای که در کاخ بودن اون روز با گریه و زاری میگفتن نرین و یه عده دیگه هم بودن که قبلا در جلسات میامدن میگفتن، ولی خب غیر از این که ما بهشون بگیم که امیدتون رو نگه دارین و اینجوری نمیمونه ما برمیگردیم، چون خیلی مشکل بود به خصوص اون موقع که اصلا خاک ایران رو ترک میکردیم که آدم فکر نمیکرد که بر نمیگرده، همیشه یه امیدی بود.
واقعا امید داشته؟
نمیدونم، آدم فکر نمیکرد که اینجوری میمونه، نمیدونم، شایدم نه، ولی فکرم نمیکردم 30 سال طول بکشه.
While the Queen had hope, the Shah seemed less convinced that they would return. He took the remains of his father's body with him. This couple were among the few Iranians who mourned the Shah's departure. Millions more celebrated. The light of the Aryans was stripped of all his titles. Newspaper headlines announced his departure with just 2 words: Shah Raft, the Shah is gone.
The desk of the Empress Farah is still adorned with pictures of her family, although a palace aide said that one of the things she had taken with her was a collection of photograph albums. Quite clearly, none of the priceless pictures and mementos collected by the Pahlavi dynasty over the years have been taken away, and the staff and the guards are convinced that they're just keeping the house warm for their master's return.
In Paris, Ayatollah Khomeini prepared for his return. His stay in France had been funded by Iran's merchants, the men who bought and sold goods in the bazaars around the country. They also financed most of his supporters' activities. Now they paid for his flight to Iran.
ببین آقای خمینی با یعنی کلا روحانیون یک ارتباط تاریخی جا افتاده با بخش بازار داشته. بازاری ها وجوهات میدادن. روحانیت ایران قبل از انقلاب از این وجوهات زندگی میکرد. بنابراین روابط بسیار تنگاتنگی داشتن. همین روحانیون بودن که دلار فرستادن پاریس که ما هواپیمای ایر فرانس رو چارتر کردیم اومدیم به ایران. یعنی ما که پول نداشتیم.
Inside Iran, Hashim Sabaghyan had the task of preparing the country for the Ayatollah's return. He started by negotiating with the army and with Iran's national airline.
رئیس هواپیمایی کشوری و اینا اومد، او قبول کرد که فرودگاه رو دقیقاً در اختیار ما بذاره، ساختمون فرودگاه. نیرو هوایی هم مأموریت پیدا کرد که باند نیرو هوایی و هواپیما و برج مراقبت با نیروی هوایی باشه. یه تیم ساری رو فرستادن، با اونم من چندین بار مذاکره داشتم. اونا گفتن ما هواپیما رو سلامت میشونیم. اولم قرار بود هواپیما از اینجا جمهوری اسلامی بره اونجا، اونا اونجا صحبت کردن، دولت فرانسه گفته بود نه ما خودمون ایر فرانس رو میفرستیم و اینها اومد.
While the negotiations continued, the country waited. The army added to the already surreal atmosphere by fighting an imaginary enemy in training maneuvers mounted for the world's press.
The army remains unswervingly loyal to the Shah, and according to the commanders, they'll support the government of Dr. Bakhtiar with resolution, patriotism, and discipline.
By going to Iran himself, the Ayatollah is playing his trump card. It'll unite his angry followers there even more, and he believes it'll help them simply sweep away the fragile government of Dr. Bakhtiar, whom he's refused to meet or to recognize. And he called today on the Iranian army to refuse to obey its orders.
ما هواپیمای فرانس رو چارتر کردیم و بهش هم سفارش کردیم که بنزین به اون اندازه بگیری که بتونه بره ایران و برگرده بدون بنزین گیری. خب هواپیمای بزرگی بود، یه تعدادی از همین ایرانیایی که بودن همه همراه آمدن. یه حدود 100 نفر ما خبرنگاران با ما بودن که خب اینا مایل بودن خودشون رو با ما بیان، ما استقبال کردیم. البته بعداً من ایراد گرفتن، گفتن شما خبرنگارا غیر اخلاقی عمل کردید، برای اینکه گفتید خبرنگارا بیان اونجا بشن ضامن برای اینکه ما رو نزنن. خب ما که نگفته بودیم شما بیاید، خودشون داوطلب شدن، ما استقبال کردیم. ولی پشت ذهنمون بود که خوبه، چرا استقبال کردیم، مجانی برایشون داریم بیاریم ایران. عاشق چشم ابروشون که نبودیم، که گفته بودیم یک اونا میخوان با ما همراه باشن، ما میخوایم یه سیف چیزی داشته باشه، تضمینی باشه. خب وقتی که اونا تو هواپیما بودن، هواپیما رو نمیزدن، چون خبرهای زیادی ما داشتیم که ممکنه هواپیما رو در بالای فضای ایران بزنن.
من با پلیس هم صحبت کردم، قرار بر این شد گذرنامه ها رو دیگه افراد نیان، گذرنامه ها رو من بیارم بدم به پلیس همه رو مهر و برود بزنه به من بده. این همکاری هم پلیس داره.
After his 15 years in exile, rejecting every effort at compromise, the Ayatollah has planned his return with masterly timing. He's come back to a country which has been without effective government for months, and he intends to provide the effective government himself. Its main inspiration would be religious.
Extraordinary how one man can command such adoration, how so many people can believe that this frail old priest holds all the answers to Iran's problems. Yet this, they say, is evidence enough that he does.
Ayatollah Khomeini delivered his first speech on home soil in Tehran's largest cemetery. Just days later, while Bakhtiar was still in power, a group of Air Force officers saluted Ayatollah Khomeini as their new commander-in-chief. The Ayatollah then named his own Prime Minister, Mehdi Bazargan, to head a new government. Like the Shah before him, Bakhtiar turned to the Israeli intelligence service, Mossad, for advice.
במהלך השבועות של ההידרדרות פנו אלינו כל מיני גורמים, אל המוסד המהולל, וביקשו לעשות משהו עם חומייני, להסיר אותו מסדר היום. וברור למה הם התכוונו. ואנחנו חשבנו שעם כל הכבוד אנחנו לא שוטרים של העולם, ואם יש לאיראנים בעיה שיטפלו בה בעצמם. 4 ימים לפני המהפכה הלכתי ופגשתי את ראש הממשלה האחרון, שפור בכתיאר, בעניינים שהוא ביקש לשוחח איתי. בין השאר שוחחתי איתו על המצב ואמרתי לו שאני ממונה על תוכנית החירום של הישראלים ואיך הוא רואה את המצב. הוא היה כמו דון קישוט, חזק, אל תדאגו, הכל יהיה בסדר, אם רק הייתם יכולים לעשות משהו עם חומייני.
On the morning of the 11th of February 1979, Bakhtiar waited for a planned meeting with his army commanders. They never showed up. Shortly after 12 noon, the army announced its neutrality in the battle between the Shah and the people. Then, in a final bout of street fighting, the old regime was swept away. 2,500 years of Persian monarchy had come to an end, and overnight, Khomeini's revolutionaries took charge of the ministries, the army, and the media. In the mayhem that followed, anyone associated with the old regime was at risk. Dariush Humayun was lucky. In a final bout of street fighting, the old regime was swept away. 2,500 years of Persian monarchy had come to an end, and overnight, Khomeini's revolutionaries took charge of the ministries, the army, and the media. In the mayhem that followed, anyone associated with the old regime was at risk. Dariush Humayun was lucky and was among a handful of former officials who managed to escape from prison.
در اون مدت که ما اونجا بودیم، اون هفته‌های آخر 600 تا سربازی از پادگان رفتن، فرار کردن. ولی در مدت تیراندازی بله ما در سلول ها بودیم، نشسته بودیم و گوش به زنگ چه خبر میشه. این سربازای نگهبانمان اونهایی که مانده بودن گاهی می اومدن سراغ ما و خبر میدادن. بعد خلاصه یکشون آمد و گفتش که اینا که به زندان حمله کرد، به دژوان حمله کردن، میگویند که زندانی ها آزادند و برن. دژوان 600 زندانی نظامی بودن دیگه، و پامانفر و افسر و سرباز و اینا اونجا بودن. و ما هم رفتیم پایین دیگه، همه توی هم بودیم و توانستیم بعد از در موج دوم فرار خلاصه ما هم فرار کردیم، ما آمدیم بیرون و رفتیم.
Many of the Shah's former ministers who were imprisoned on his orders were summarily executed. Among them, Abbas Hoveyda, the former prime minister. The United States was one of the first countries to recognize the new Islamic government. The Shah was now extremely ill.
Obviously, my heart is bleeding. This is my whole life. For 37 years, I have toiled and sweat, and I had tears and to make my country what it was and what it could have been. And look at what it is now.
The Shah died in Egypt on the 27th of July 1980 at the age of 60. The former queen, Farah, lives in exile between France and the United States. Ibrahim Yazdi and Hashim Sabarian joined the new provisional government in Iran. Yazdi became the foreign minister, Sabarian the minister of interior. In November 1979, Abbas Abdi joined a group of students who stormed and took over the American embassy in Tehran. The provisional government ordered the students out, but Ayatollah Khomeini gave them his backing. Within weeks, he'd appointed a new, more radical government. Yazdi and Sabarian are now both members of the opposition to the current government of Iran. After the death of the Ayatollah in 1989, Abbas Abdi too became a reformist and has been jailed twice for criticizing the regime.
Watching a revolution is like watching a hurricane. It's beautiful, powerful. You don't know what it's going to do. You could have a rainbow at the end of the hurricane, or you could have a flood. You don't know.
Michael Matrinko and 51 other Americans became hostages for 444 days. The United States cut its diplomatic ties with Iran. It had been blindsided by the speed of events there, but it's unlikely it could have prevented the revolution. Hostility between the two countries is still a reality today, with implications beyond the Middle East.